Why is the president so supportive of flying the Confederate flag?
So I think you're referring to a tweet this morning, is that right?
Correct.
Well, I think you're mischaracterizing the tweet. The tweet was aimed at pointing out that the FBI report of the alleged hate crime at NASCAR concluded that the garage door pull, which had been there since last fall, was obviously not targeted at a specific individual because, in fact, it was a garage pull, and in fact, it was there since last fall, long before these 43 teams arrived. And it was concluded by the FBI that this was, quote, not an intentional racist act.
For clarity, I'm asking you about the Confederate flag. So my question is, why is the president so supportive of flying the Confederate flag?
The president never said that. Again, you're taking his tweet completely out of context.
The president said that NASCAR saw bad ratings because they took down the Confederate flag, banned the Confederate flag. Does he believe NASCAR should fly the Confederate flag, and why don't they fly it here?
The whole point of the tweet was to note the incident, the alleged hate crime, that it, in fact, was not a hate crime. At the very end, the ban on the flag was mentioned in the broader context of the fact that he rejects this notion that somehow NASCAR men and women who go to these sporting events are racist, when in fact, as it turns out, what we saw with the FBI report and the alleged incident of a hate crime, it was a complete indictment of the media's rush to judgment, once again calling this a hate crime when the FBI completely dismissed that.
Bubba Wallace's responsibility to apologize for an investigation into a news that he didn't report and he never even saw. It was NASCAR that found this, that reported this, and even the FBI referred to it as a news, even if they said it wasn't a specific crime against Mr. Wallace. Why is the president even suggesting that Mr. Wallace should apologize?
Well, look, the FBI, as I noted, concluded that this was not a hate crime, and he believes it'd go a long way if Bubba came out and acknowledged that as well. This was not a hate crime as noted by the FBI.
Been very clear that the FBI found this was not intentional. Why is he addressing this at Mr. Wallace?
So one of the things this is where the president comes from, and this is where the president stands. And he actually hinted at this in his July 4th speech. To those in the media who falsely and consistently label their opponents as racist, who condemn patriotic citizens, who offer a clear and truthful defense of American unity, we want a clear and faithful defense of American history and unity. And when you level false charges, you not only slander me, you slander the American people. He believes the American people are good. And the allegations and the rush to judgment with Jesse Smollett in the Bubba Wallace case and with the Covington Catholic boys, we shouldn't be so quick to jump onto those narratives. Those are just three examples of those that have been proven false.
An investigation that someone else initiated, suggesting he was possibly the victim of a hate crime?
Yes.
The Confederate part. Why would the president not praise NASCAR for removing the Confederate flag, particularly given the history of that flag, the symbol that it has for African Americans, and also what it represents in terms of just the treasonous acts and the insurrection against the Republic?
So
why would he not praise them for taking that down, even if it's a ratings hit?
The president takes great offense when Americans are knee-jerk reaction summed up as racist. And in aggregate, the picture being painted here in this incident seemed to be that there was that suggestion there, when in fact what we're seeing across the nation is this vast cancel culture where we're going to tear down our monuments, we're going to tear down Gandhi, we're going to tear down George Washington, we're going to tear down Lincoln. It's really quite appalling what we've seen happen across the country, and the president wants no part in cancel culture. He wants no part in the tearing down and defacing of Matthias Baldwin, an abolitionist, Philadelphia Civil War soldiers, John Greenleaf Whittier, vandalized, an abolitionist. He wants no part in this. He stands against the demonization of Americans, and he stands firmly on the side of preserving our history.
If it feels like Kayleigh is up against the ropes, it probably has something to do with the fact that she's trying to defend the utterly indefensible here. What's happened is that Trump is watching his poll numbers plummet across the country, and so he reverted back to the only tool he has in his toolbox, which is to appeal to a white, far-right base. He must figure that he won in 2016 with that formula, and so it has to work again. Of course, in 2016, he hadn't yet overseen the failed response to a pandemic, which plunged the country into an economic recession and killed 130,000 Americans, which was followed by historic civil rights demonstrations. But let's not get lost in the minor details. And so Trump woke up and took to Twitter to tweet, "Has Bubba Wallace apologized to all of those great NASCAR drivers and officials who came to his aid, stood by his side, and were willing to sacrifice everything for him, only to find out that the whole thing was just another hoax?" That and flag decision has caused lowest ratings ever. To be clear about what Trump is asking here, he wants Bubba Wallace, a black NASCAR driver, to apologize for something he himself didn't report and that even the FBI conceded was a noose. This is what was hanging on his stall door. It's a noose. It might also serve as a garage pole, but it's a noose. And Trump's answer here is that Bubba Wallace should apologize for that. Kayleigh can parse her words from now until the sun goes down, but Trump's demand here is the absolute epitome of racism. Trump also invokes the Confederate flag in his tweet, because what's really more important in the middle of a pandemic that's killed 130,000 Americans than a statue of some Confederate general who died more than 100 years ago? And so the same concept applies. Trump's not concerned about governing, he's not concerned about helping people, he's not even concerned with making sure that people survive. His only goal is to continue appealing to his base to energize them ahead of the next election. Defending the Confederate flag is his way of accomplishing that, with no subtlety whatsoever, because every breath he takes is with his own re-election in mind. And that's made even more ridiculous by the fact that Kayleigh McEnany's response to all of this is that we're the ones who took Trump's tweet out of context, as if when Trump said outright that Bubba Wallace should apologize to NASCAR, and that incident, as well as their decision to ban the flying of Confederate flags at their events, that he wasn't positioning himself overtly against those things. Give me a break. Kayleigh's defense of Trump here relies on this idea that we aren't capable of forming the most basic judgments about people. That when Trump tweets in all caps that their decision to ban the Confederate flag led to their lowest ratings ever, that we somehow don't know where he stands on that. This White House might be operating on the idea that the American people are all as dense as Trump is, but that's not a bet I'd be willing to take. And rest assured, the fact that Trump and the rest of his mouthpieces are digging in their heels and doubling and tripling down on this, even as Trump's poll numbers are sinking, goes to show that if they're not willing to change their strategy now, they're never going to change it. They're not interested in broadening their coalition in the slightest. Their only priority now is juicing enthusiasm among their base. And so the next few months are going to be full of Trump throwing red meat daily to his most ardent supporters. It's going to be overt racism on Twitter, followed by Kayleigh McEnany scolding the media for having the audacity to think that what he said is exactly what he meant. It is the very definition of gaslighting. But while that might have worked on everyone once, it sure doesn't look like the American people are going to fall for it again. If you like that video, please check out my brand new podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, where I'll cover the most important political stories of the week and interview major players in the world of politics. Available now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Check it out and subscribe now.